In this video, we're going to take a look at a blue ink by Diamine, a part of their 150th anniversary series, Blue Velvet. As always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a link to the Blue Ink playlist, so if you want to see more, you can find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. Now we have no feather, spread, halo sheen. There is shading that's kind of hard to really point to, but just looking at the extra fine, there's a very definite notice of change. You do see it a little bit more in the word quick. You can see the word seconds is much darker than the word 8. The medium has the same thing going on as the extra fine, and the stub has none of it. So it's got very nice dark to a very dark shading. The extra fine took 8 seconds to dry, while the medium took 11 seconds to dry. We see that the tones are very much the same, although the stub is the darkest tone the entire time. The scrubby for both show no color variation, but it is very definitely there and interestingly there. The smear test says you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then, a Pilot Metropolitan with a fine nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, but some minor ghosting. We have no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, no color variation, from nib to nib, nothing. This is really straightforward. This is an interesting dark blue because it's not so dark. The extra fine took 13 seconds to dry, while the medium took 31 seconds to dry. I just like how it's flipped that way. The scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we get none, but it is nice. The smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. Now, it's got a something green on the bottom that is pushing its way up. It's very light, it's just faintly there, but it is there. And then as it moves up, it is a very dark blue, and it is very nice. The one on the right that's let dry for 10 minutes before it's put into water, there's really no difference between the two of these. So unless that something green has something permanent about it, I'm not expecting any kind of resistance from this ink. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, but we do have some shading. The extra fine's a bit lighter than the stub. The medium is the same tone as the stub. Now, we're not really getting shading in the medium or the stub, but in the extra fine, you certainly do see it where brown is much lighter than the word quick. Lazy's lighter than the word, dog's lazier, dog's lazier. Dog's lighter than the word lazy, and lazy does go from darker to lighter. The extra fine took 6 seconds to dry, while the medium took 13. Still such a great color. The scrubby for both are showing no color variation, but we're definitely getting some spotting of it up in the extra fine. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it does spread and become a little woolly. You can read all the information, but the highlighter also becomes a little muddy looking. And so personally, I wouldn't use it in a note-taking situation, but you could. Before we get to the water, the most noticeable thing to me about this swatch is how perfectly color accurate it is to the writing. We don't get that a whole lot where the swatch is exactly like the writing, and this one is. beautiful. Now, water's reactivating and lifting most of this, and there is a spot where you start to see some of the white of the paper coming through. That makes sense when you think about the chromatography and the fact that I know it only took water to get it out of my pen. Pen flush does everything that water does and not really much more, while 1/3 bleach solution is completely obliterating it. The next writing sample is done on Northbooks paper. We have no bleeding, minor ghosting. Now we have no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It's a little bit more absorbent paper. The extra fine they all have the same tone. So it's not even tone variation by pen. The extra fine took 2 seconds to dry. The medium also took 2 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both are giving us no color variation, and we didn't get any. And the smear test, there's a maybe. Maybe you could recover if you smeared while you were writing, but I wouldn't count on it. For the inks tested, the average viscosity is 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine's Blue Velvet has a viscosity of 1.7, meaning this is a wet ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests and all that's done, then down in the description is a link to that video. Now, let's take a look at Nimacine paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather spread, halo sheen. We do get 1 or 2 spots of shading with the extra fine. You see the K is a little bit darker, the word the is a little bit darker. Lazy seems to go from a little darker to a little lighter. Although all of this seems to be very much the same tone. The extra fine took 8 seconds to dry, while the medium took 12. Still very quick. The scrubby for both give us no color variation, and we do get a light peppering of it in the extra fine though. And the smear test, I do think you stand a fair chance of recovery if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, and the realm of normal was 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine's Velvet Blue has an average dry time of 14 seconds, making it normal. The last writing sample is done on 28-pound copy paper. Now on the extra fine, we only have a couple of spots that it came deeper into the page. It is not a big deal. I don't see any problem there. The medium, you could not use the back of the page, but it does not touch the page underneath. Now, we have some feathering in the medium. Some feathering in the extra fine. The feathering in the extra fine is much smaller, much more manageable. Definitely wouldn't get in the way of somebody using it. The medium might. That's a your choice kind of thing. We have no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, although we do get the extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the medium. The extra fine took 1 second to dry. Its scrubby shows no color variation, and we got none. And the smear test, you can't smear it, so you don't have to worry about it. Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's 150th anniversary Blue Velvet, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I decided to go with a very interesting orange from Elixir, their Siloso Sunset. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of Diamine's Blue Velvet? A very bright blue that shades by giving even darker spots. This is not just an ordinary blue. They made a real winner. In the sea of blue inks, this one stands out without a doubt. So what nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I do think it always looks good, and I did like the lighter tone that I got from a dry fine, but I really did like its very dark and vivid tones that we were getting with wet fines and wet medium pens, but I'd probably personally go for that wet medium. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Platinum Brown.